Coming up on Arirang News. President Yoon has had a series of bilateral meetings with 10 African leaders at his office today and later hosted a welcome banquet ahead of the Korea-Africa Summit set to kick off tomorrow. South Korea says it'll fully halt the inter-Korean military pact signed in 2018 until mutual trust between Seoul and Pyongyang is restored. This follows the North's latest provocative acts, including sending balloons filled with trash across the border. The government is considering lifting the ban on hospitals, accepting the resignation letters of junior doctors submitted over 3 months ago at the start of the medical dispute. It also said licensing exams will take place as scheduled, sparking concerns about a shortage of doctors. Good evening. It's 9 p.m. here in Seoul. Thank you for joining us on Arirang News. Ahead of the Korea-Africa Summit set to kick off tomorrow, President Yoon has had a series of bilateral meetings with 10 African leaders at his office on Monday. Starting off with the leader of Lesotho, he welcomed those from Côte d'Ivoire, Mauritius, and Guinea-Bissau, among others, and ended the day with the head of Cape Verde. As the host of the summit, it is customary for the head of the state to meet with his counterparts from participating nations. And among the 48 participating African countries, around 30 nations leaders will take part in the Korea-Africa Summit. As for the first official event, Yoon hosted a banquet for all participants tonight. In the meantime, the president said in an interview with AFP on Sunday that securing critical mineral imports and boosting trade ties with Africa are some of the aims of the summit. And in light of South Korea engaging with over 48 African nations this week, a leading expert on South Korea's soft power and former ambassador to several African countries sat down with our Oh Soo-young to discuss Korea's approach to the continent.
Empowering people and their livelihoods must be at the core of South Korea's partnership with African countries as they look to pursue shared growth, sustainability and solidarity. That's according to diplomat and academic Park Jong-dae, a leading expert on Korean soft power diplomacy. While Seoul's multilateral engagement with 48 African countries this week comes late compared to other advanced economies, Park says South Korea has unique merits to offer.
It is natural, I think, that now we step up and meet the challenge to assume greater capabilities, and that is in line with the government vision, President Yoon vision of a global pivotal state, that we want to be also a leader in international fields, in also universal values, okay, and security and promotion of prosperity, and we can share our experiences, which is vital, especially for developing countries.
With food shortages, severe weather events, internal conflicts and corruption hindering socio-economic growth in African countries, the former ambassador to Uganda and South Africa raised the need for a people-centered approach rather than temporary military or political solutions.
So I think human capital development should be our centerpiece of collaboration because it really determines everything. And Africa does not have challenges in development because it lacks resources or means, or even lack of institutions. They have. But what is the problem is lack of implementation and follow-up, and that requires human capacity, which is not only level of education, but the attitude, mindset for development.
Park has told African communities they need not wait for assistance as he initiated various projects in Uganda inspired by the Semao or New Village movement. The community-driven effort in the 70s helped drive South Korea's per capita income from $65 in 1965 to roughly $5,000 by the late 80s.
Why it's important is because it stresses ownership. Ownership, for example, the motto of Samarundong is diligence, self-help, and cooperation. It's not about getting funding, getting assistance, or being dependent. It's about self-empowerment, which I think is crucial for the success of all the development projects. And it's the fastest way that Africa can get out of poverty and to achieve development.
He hopes the two-day summit will serve as a springboard for more targeted cooperation between African states and South Korea, as well as non-governmental actors and businesses in areas like agribusiness, digital technology, energy and infrastructure.
So your acquaintance with Africa, it stretches beyond your long distinguished career as a diplomat. It goes back to your childhood years as a boy living in Uganda. So on a personal note, how do you hope to see more cultural or people-to-people exchanges between the countries?
Yes, having lived in Africa when I was a youngster and having returned as a diplomat, there are certain myths that has to be dispelled. For example, many people think that the living conditions in Africa is very harsh with the detrimental environment. That is not the case. While Africa has huge desert, Saharan desert and Sahel region, but it also has very fertile land. But largely, it has the endowment. It's very much blessed. And also it has rich minerals, precious minerals. So there are huge potential. But what attracted me most is people are very open and pragmatic and flexible. Since this is the first time ever that Korea has invited the vast majority of African heads of state, and it's a very useful occasion to use it as important momentum to jumpstart our collaborative relations and also to spur exchanges, cultural exchanges, people-to-people exchanges, but also academic exchanges. And our goal is to make it successful so that we'll be able to continue this summit on a regular basis.
Well, on that note, we really do hope for the success of this first ever Korea-Africa summit. And thank you so much for your time today, Ambassador.
Okay, it was a great pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And ahead of South Korea's first multilateral summit with the African Union, the Culture Ministry hosted a high-level tourism diplomacy forum. Our Yoon was at the 2024 Korea-Africa Tourism Forum to see what were the perspectives of key industry figures on tourism offerings by both Korea and Africa.
The 2024 Korea-Africa Tourism Forum has opened a new chapter in tourism diplomacy. Joining hands with the Korea Tourism Organization and the United Nations Tourism, South Korea's Culture Ministry hosted the forum participated in by the President of Mauritius and ministers from across Africa, including Nigeria and Namibia. Seoul's Four Seasons Hotel was the host venue for the first ever high-level tourism diplomacy talks between Korea and Africa. The forum on Monday had the theme of forging strategic partnerships for sustainable tourism diplomacy. The discussion's main focus was to delve into strategies for enhancing cultural exchanges and fostering investment cooperation within the tourism sector between Korea and Africa.
Africa is the world's youngest and most vibrant region. It stands with endless potential for collaboration with South Korea. Tourism is believed to be a vital bridgehead in fostering a mutually beneficial relationship between Korea and Africa for the future.
President Prediat Singh Gopan of Mauritius also shared his expectations for the forum, aiming to exchange ideas and best practices with South Korea.
For the African continent, the tourism industry constitutes a key sector contributing around 6% to its GDP. Korea, on the other hand, is a world leader in innovation in the tourism sector, and its attractiveness have become remarkable.
He added that Mauritius could learn from South Korea in terms of strategies and foster partnerships given that tourism offers from Mauritius are complementary. The CEO of Africa Tourism Partners, Kwakie Donko, proposed improving the trade of tourism products in the private sector as well as investments. But he did highlight the importance of enhancing connectivity through people, saying that when it comes to social and cultural exchange, there was no better opportunity.
Make sure that these Africans in Korea and then the Koreans in Africa become our ambassadors in both destinations to make sure.
The first step in unlocking the tourism potential between Korea and Africa is to encourage active participation among people to raise awareness. As part of this, after the forum, participants visited the photo exhibition, Invitation to Africa, at the National Museum of Korean Contemporary History. The exhibition aims to promote a positive image of Africa and foster growth in the continent's tourism sector by featuring 38 photographs that showcase tourist destinations from 27 African countries. It will be open to the public for free until June 7th. Lee Eun-hee, Arirang News.
In other news, South Korea says it'll fully suspend the 2018 Inter-Korean military agreement until mutual trust is restored, responding to North Korea's recent trash balloon campaign. Our Bae Eun-ji explains what the suspension means.
In response to Pyongyang's sending of trash-carrying balloons, Seoul's National Security Council said it has decided to entirely suspend the 2018 Inter-Korean Tension Reduction Pact until mutual trust is restored between the South and the North. The NSC said on Monday that Seoul will now be able to hold military exercises along the military demarcation line that separates the two Koreas, allowing it to take immediate actions in the case of provocations from North Korea. North Korea on Sunday announced that it would stop sending trash balloons across the border, just hours after the South warned that it's ready to take unbearable measures, possibly resuming blasting anti-Pyongyang messages across the inter-Korean border.
We are clearly warning North Korea once again not to engage in provocations such as balloon bombs filled with filth or GPS jamming. If such actions are repeated, we will ramp up our response.
The North has said trash balloons were part of countermeasures against propaganda leaflets sent by anti-regime activists in South Korea. But an expert says the intention behind the North's move is because the regime feels its legitimacy is being questioned after feeling belittled and marginalized following the 75 years of inter-Korean competition.
Now, more specifically, the North is also trying to insult the South Koreans just before the commencement of the Africa Summit, but it stopped the balloon launches before most of the leaders arrived. So I think it was a deliberate timing.
Around 600 balloons carrying cigarette butts, waste paper, and plastic bags were flown from North Korea over the weekend, on top of the around 260 balloons carrying waste and excrement sent earlier last week. This prompted the South Korean military to advise people to be aware of falling objects and not to touch objects suspected of being from North Korea, and asking people to report such items to the military or police instead. Damage from the balloons has been reported across the nation, including a windshield on a car parked in Gyeonggi-do province being completely destroyed. Bae Eun-ji, Arirang News.
Today, President Yoon announced his approval for drilling for potential oil and gas fields under the EC. He indicated a very high chance of prospects of the area holding as much as 14 billion barrels of oil and gas. Our Lee Si-hoo reports.
On Monday, President Yoon Suk-yeol announced that he had approved South Korea's exploratory drilling for potentially vast oil and gas reserves in the EC off the southeastern coastal city of Pohang.
저는 오늘 산업통상자원부에 동해 심해 석유가스전에 대한 탐사 시추 계획을 승인했습니다. 사전 준비 작업을 거쳐 금년 말에 첫 번째 시추공 작업에 들어가면 내년 상반기까지는 어느 정도 결과가 나올 것입니다.
President Yoon said at a briefing in his office, there's a high chance the area may contain as much as 14 billion barrels of oil and gas, according to studies by expert organizations, upon request from the South Korean government. He says the amount is judged to be 300 times the amount of resources discovered in an EC gas field in the late 1990s, and about the amount of natural gas that could fuel the country for more than 29 years. And the field could also contain enough petroleum to last the country for more than 4 years. Han Deok-keun, the Minister of Trade, Industry and Energy, said the drilling is expected to begin around December. Han suggested a rough timeline afterward if the drilling does confirm the presence of vast reserves.
If reserves are confirmed, we expect the commercialization process to begin around 2027 to 2028 and commercial production to begin in 2035.
An official at the ministry also explained the success rate of exploratory drilling is around 20%. The government and the Korea National Oil Corporation, along with investments from global companies, will cover the drilling costs. It's expected at least 5 boreholes will be drilled at the cost of over 100 billion Korean won, or around $75 million per drill. South Korea is one of the world's largest buyers of crude oil and gas, according to the Korea National Oil Corporation. The country's energy stocks jumped after the announcement. Lee Si-hu, Arirang News.
The government is considering lifting the ban on hospitals, accepting the resignation letters of junior doctors submitted over 3 months ago at the start of the medical dispute to pressure them to return to work. It also said licensing exams would take place as scheduled. Our Choi Soo-hyung has the latest about the ongoing medical dispute.
The government announced that it's considering allowing hospitals to accept the resignation letters of trainee doctors who submitted them over 3 months ago when they walked off their jobs to protest the government's medical reform plan. The Health Ministry stated on Monday that lifting the ban on accepting resignations would force these residents to find jobs at other hospitals.
If the ban on accepting resignation letters is lifted, the heads of hospitals have said they can ask the residents to return independently, so the government is actively reviewing this.
The ministry also said that residents who return will face minimal disciplinary action and that many of their demands, except for the complete withdrawal of medical school expansions, are being reflected in the government's medical reforms. It added that the number of returning residents, though small, was growing, with around 800 out of about 12,000 working at training hospitals nationwide. However, less than 10% of residents from the top 100 training hospitals responded positively to individual consultations at each hospital aimed at encouraging their return as requested by the Health Ministry. Regarding medical students' licensing exams, the ministry stated that the exams and practical tests will proceed as scheduled from September 2nd to November 4th. Following the Korean Medical Association's vote on a further strike, the government expressed regret, urging it to engage in dialogue and acknowledge its responsibility for the prolonged healthcare problems. Additionally, the government said it would closely monitor whether private practice doctors are considering collective action. Choi Soo-hyung, Arirang News.
Representatives from multilateral development banks, local companies, and the Korean government have gathered in Seoul for specific talks on ways to strengthen cooperation on climate projects. Our Lee Soo-jin tells us more.
Aiding the overseas expansion of South Korea's environmental industry is what the Ministry of Environment and the Korea Environmental Industry and Technology Institute aim to achieve at the 3rd annual Korea-MDB Green Cooperation Forum.
Our world faces numerous environmental challenges, from long-standing issues to the pressing climate crisis. KT is hosting this forum to facilitate cooperation between the Korean government and multilateral development bankers in tackling these environmental issues.
The forum, which took place on Monday in Seoul, seeks to provide South Korean green tech companies with opportunities to network with MDBs. As international financial institutions that provide economic support for developing countries, MDBs have increased their climate project financing to more than $63 billion from 2016 to 2020.
There is an opportunity to collaborate with MDBs in different specific sectors: water and sanitation, water management activities, and also like the waste management.
And local companies can benefit from their participation in these projects in various ways.
For incentive, the incentive in the sense that I think once the project is developed very well, it's a win-win issue. I think the market opportunities are there.
One local company that has participated in an MDB Green project is Yoon, an engineering and construction consulting company. In 2022, it carried out studies to modernize the existing wastewater treatment facility and sewage systems in Costa Rica to adapt them to climate change.
We consider partaking in MDB projects a very lucrative opportunity because it allows us to enter overseas markets.
And this year, it will participate in the Inter-American Development Bank's project to improve the infrastructure of sewage treatments in 8 cities in Belize. With more opportunities like this to network, Korean firms will find it easier in the future to get involved in green projects by multilateral development banks. 이수진, 아리랑 뉴스.
In other news, what landmark springs to mind when you think of Seoul? While many Koreans named Hangang River, foreign residents named a different landmark in the heart of the city. Our An Sung-jin takes a closer look.
The Gwanghwamun complex is a spacious area in Jongno-gu district and is home to not only various companies but also historical sites as well, attracting both local and foreign residents as well as tourists. What makes this area so special?
From skyscrapers to palaces and nature, out of the numerous places one can visit in Seoul, Gwanghwamun Square was ranked first as the capital's representative landmark. This is according to a survey of foreign residents by the Seoul metropolitan government. Nearly half of those surveyed chose Gwanghwamun Square.
So I think it's pretty amazing to have like the contrast between the old architecture and the mountains. So that I really like.
In particular for me, I knew this place because I watched The King, Eternal Monarch. So it's one of my best K-dramas. So I said, oh, I have to go there. So for me, it's based on the K-drama. So yeah.
Gwanghwamun Square used to be the main street of the capital Hanyang during the Joseon dynasty. It encapsulates the history of South Korea through its cultural heritage, including the statues of King Sejong the Great and Admiral Lee Sun-shin. With the historical view of Gyeongbokgung Palace in the background, now this space hosts various cultural events for the public to enjoy. People also gather here to cheer on sports teams or to protest. An expert further explains why this space attracts so many people.
A public square attracts a lot of people and acts as a hub. Located in one of the city centers, the biggest attractiveness of this area is that it's completely open and pedestrian-friendly. That's why it makes a great place for tourists as well to come see the view of the palace, the Blue House and Bugaksan Mountain in the background.
Whether it's to embrace the historical significance or the modern cultural events it holds, Gwanghwamun Square is open to the public to grasp the Korean experience. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
We have certainly entered summer. Since the beginning of June, the weather has been hotter than usual in western regions such as Seoul. However, there's a possibility of rain until tonight in the southern parts of the country, and there's even a chance of thunderstorms and hail. Tomorrow will be dry across the country. Early summer heat will continue in most areas tomorrow. Clear skies are in the forecast tomorrow in most areas, with highs hovering around 29 degrees Celsius in Seoul. Morning temperatures will feel similar to today. In the afternoon, the temperature will rise quickly and it will be hotter than today in most areas. For tomorrow, Daegu and Gyeongju will start off at 13 degrees. Highs will get up to 28 in Daejeon, Busan and Jeju 24 degrees. The early heat will increase until the day after tomorrow. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
Well, that is all for this newscast tonight. Thank you for watching. We'll be back tomorrow morning with the latest news. Hope everyone has a great start to the week.